Fate Be Changed. Chapter 2, Elinor. Cognizant of the short window between when lute practice ended and when her lessons on the kingdoms of ancient Scotland would begin, Princess Elinor McCameron moved about her bedchamber with haste, shoving her thinnest kirtle and hose into a linen sack along with an extra pair of slippers. She reached for her hairbrush, but then decided against it. Her head would be covered for much of her journey. She would secure a new hairbrush once she reached her destination. She had to keep the sack as light as possible. Anything too heavy would only slow her down. Elinor stopped, her hands arrested on the bag. She tilted her head to the side, listening intently to the sound of footfalls in the corridor. She halted her breath as the seconds ticked by. The footsteps grew louder and louder still. Just as she was about to stuff the sack underneath the bed, they stopped. Elinor closed her eyes and sucked in a relieved breath, and then she quickly returned to the task at hand. Time was of the essence, and she could not waste any more of it. She picked up 3 tallow candles she had pilfered from the wall sconces on the west wing and tucked them into the sack. They were all partly burned, but her presence would be questioned if she were to go to the chandlery for new candles. Besides, she would not spare the time. Her maid would be here to call her soon. Elinor gathered the last of her supplies, including the dagger she had taken from the castle's armory. She had a knife of her own, of course. Every lass in the kingdom received one once she reached a certain age, but she could not escape to the lowlands with the modest blade she had been given to celebrate turning 5 and 10. The dagger she had stolen from the armory was for protection, not ornamentation. Elinor hoped she would not have to use it, but she was prepared to do so if need be. Her hands shook as she tried to close the open end of the sack with a stash from one of her night rails. Rope or twine would have worked better, but she would not have encountered this same question she would have received from the chandlery maids, were she to go to the stables or kitchens inquiring about rope or twine. Princesses had no use for common household items. Elinor took a moment to calm her frayed nerves. She could not panic. Panic was her enemy. Panic would cause her to make a misstep, and a misstep could very well cost her the one thing she coveted most: her freedom. The weight of her impending betrothal squeezed against her chest like a corset pulled too tight. So little of her life was her own. Once betrothed and married, she would control nothing. Any decision she made would have to be approved by her husband, just as any she made now had to be approved by the king and queen. She was in danger of having her entire life dictated by others. It was why she had to leave. She deserved to taste freedom, to know what it felt like to rise in the morning and not have the weight of an entire kingdom on her shoulders, to go about her day doing the things she wanted to do, and not what others demanded her. Just the thought of having such liberty sent a jolt of anticipation down her spine. She retrieved her favorite pewter-colored cloak from the wardrobe and just as quickly shoved it back. She needed something old and dingy, something that would not stand out in the forest. Elinor searched through the kirtles and gowns, determined to find a more appropriate garment. That was when she spotted it. The worn brown cloak she had borrowed from Ewan, the stable hand, back when she had been caught out in the rain. She had meant to return it ages ago, but she had held on to it for some reason. "This is the reason," Elinor whispered, holding the cloak to her chest. It was a sign. The universe must have approved of what she was doing. Why would it provide this cloak if her true destiny was to remain here in McCameron Castle and take her place as the future queen? She bundled the cloak up in her arms and raced to the bed. Elinor glanced out the window on her way back to the wardrobe and did a double-take. She could have sworn she had glimpsed a streak of red among the trees. Could it have been a bird? No, it was too big for a bird. A deer, maybe? An uneasy feeling settled in the pit of Elinor's stomach. She would ignore it. She had to. Fear was as detrimental to her plans as panic. She would not allow either to deter her. Princess, it's time for your lessons." No. This was what she got for dawdling. Elinor grabbed the sack and stuffed it in the bottom of her wardrobe just as the maid entered the room. "Princess, your lessons," Orla, her mother's most trusted maid, said. "I shall be there soon." Orla gave her a look that closely mimicked the one her mother, Queen Katarina, would have given her had she come to fetch Elinor. Her spirit sank. The queen's maids were loyal to a fault. Orla made more than any of the others. She would not leave Elinor's side until she had delivered the princess to her lessons, just as Queen Katarina had ordered, no doubt. I shall follow you there now, Elinor amended. Orla gave her a firm nod. She had missed out on her chance this time. She would not make that mistake again.